Hi friends! Last week we talked about Amanchu and queerbaiting in sports anime as it pertains to female protagonists. But I think the water's finally frozen over, and we've arrived at the bastion of gay sports anime, Yuri on Ice. Yuri on Ice was an anime produced by MAPPA, written by Sayo Yamamoto and Mitsuro Kubo, and directed by Jun Shishido, and that aired from October 6th to December 22nd in 2016. It was critically well received. It was nominated for the Best 2D Animated Program in the Asian Television Awards, and during the Crunchyroll Anime Awards in 2017, it swept with Best Couple, Best Opening, Best Boy, Most Heartwarming Scene, Best Ending, Best Animation, and it won Anime of the Year. It also won Best Anime Series in the IGN 2016 Summer Movie Awards, and won the Fan Prize in Animation of the Year in the Tokyo Anime Awards television category. The quality of the anime has been debated, but it was also praised for its realistic and respectful depiction of homosexuality. Pro skater Yuri Katsuki's idol Viktor Nikiforov quit skating for a year to coach him from his nervous mediocrity to the Ice Skating World Cup. Yuri on Ice is gay, overtly so. Yuri and Victor are clearly in a relationship as they could be. They declare their love for each other, kiss, and end the show engaged. They are intended to be gay, as stated by the woman who created the show. In 2016, queer representation in media in both Japan and America were on the incline, along with public views on homosexuality. Same-sex unions were allowed in the Shibuya Ward, Setagaya Wards, Iga of the Mie Prefecture, Tarazuka of the Hyogo Prefecture, Naha in the Okinawa Prefecture, and Sapporo in the Hokkaido Prefecture. The gay characters are shown to have lives outside of their queerness and are complex and interesting outside of their sexual identities, while still showing canon representation that has been deemed realistic by men-loving men living in Japan and in the West. However, Yuri on Ice is significant not only by providing gay representation in sports anime, but also in proving that canon gay representation is profitable. Because, first and foremost, the making of artistic content, especially animation projects, has to be funded by a production company, and it has to be profitable to do that. As mentioned before, it swept in the award seasons, and it made loads of money, both in Japan and overseas. Despite not being the first anime to explicitly show a gay relationship between two men, it is considered one of the most widely popular, at least in the West, and thus it's usually held up as a paragon of what gay representation should be in anime. That, and also, it does do a serviceable enough job of not over-sexualizing the gay relationship while not infantilizing the adult male characters either. Homosexuality has a history of being deemed inappropriate for younger audiences due to its being seen as sexual deviance. Same-sex relationships have been historically referred to as hentai or sexually strange in Japanese culture. I feel like it's worth noting that in the West, hentai is straight up just the colloquial term for, anime pornography, so. The issues talked about before with gay people being hypersexualized to fulfill specific fetishes, along with any divergence from the set expectations society puts on people, becomes relevant here, where the issue is not the excess, but the lack. When you try to desexualize men-loving men relationships to sanitize it for a larger audience, or to try to swing the pendulum the other way from the issue we talked about earlier about over-sexualization, it can seem like you are infantilizing your gay characters, which only works to stigmatize gay sexuality. However, authors and creators usually have no choice in the matter. The author talked about how she struggled with getting the studio to add even the kiss in. While there was no official censorship laws, companies will evaluate risk of how controversial they can still be while turning in the most profit they can. Of course, being more controversial would mean less people would watch the show, so to ensure it met the network guidelines, the lovely representation discussed earlier was a bit sanitized. The kiss was behind an arm Victor had around Yuri's head, blocking the viewer from seeing it and making it debatably a hug. The exchanging of rings in front of a church, promising themselves to each other, is clarified to be an exchange of quote-unquote victory rings. In the English dub, at least. It is an interesting point that a lot of this censorship isn't actually present in the original anime. Actually, a lot of the toning down of the gay overtones is done in the dub, even though it is still very, very explicitly gay. Though Victor does claim he'll marry Yuri only if he wins gold. Then, of course, there's the cut down. What was originally supposed to be a 24-episode season was cut down to 12. I couldn't find the reason why, though. The show obviously suffered for it. There are some pacing issues that involve the unbalanced character and skating scene to actual character development and plot ratio. However, it should be noted that the restrictions were not all bad. The inability to actually address the homosexual themes allowed the characters' relationships to exist without the 20s stuttered through, but I'm a boy. I've always been different from the others that are usually present in other pieces of media. While some find this to be a detriment, others find it refreshing. The characters are allowed to exist without any disclaimers on their sexuality. They're allowed to exist as just a couple, even as you see how their queerness affects their daily lives, because that's how it often works in the real world. There's not usually a clean cutscene where you have the "but I'm gay" discussion. They're just two men that are attracted to each other, developing a relationship between each other. All of this made an altogether profitable endeavor. In the first half of 2017, it was the second most successful media franchise in Japan, taking 3,262,936,824 yen from sales in home video and music releases. This isn't to glorify what the production company did in any way. In 2016, trends were already on the up and up for gay representation and gay acceptance, so it wasn't the most revolutionary piece of media in the last 10 years. Of course, also, the reaction wasn't all positive. First of all, the homophobes were vocal, especially as Yuri swept on yearly anime awards. There was a massive backlash online, as there always is. However, though I do agree that there were better shows both plot and animation-wise, much of the criticism was discussed at a gay show winning out, specifically because of the rep. There was also criticism from people within the LGBTQ+ community and their allies, saying that it was unrealistic and fell back into the sexual fodder for straight audiences category. I assume this is mostly meant about the few naked Victor scenes, because Yuri grew up in an onsen, so there are some onsen scenes, and then the few scenes where Yuri and Victor do vaguely sexual things like put lip balm on each other or grab each other by the tie in a manner that is obviously in advance. I assume also they're talking about Christopher, who is the definition of sexualized, i.e. his "I'm going to come" quote, and 100 other things he does. It's kind of his whole personality. There are risks to having a canon rep in your show. It can be critiqued as canon rep, and it can alienate parts of your audience that aren't on board for the whole boys kissing thing. While I, sitting at home, can say, alienate them, who cares? The studios care. The studios usually want as many people watching it as possible because animation is such an investment of money and time, and so to do that, there is a need to create the most inoffensive moments ever. This is where you get things like Disney advertising their one shot of a Star Wars kiss, because increasingly, gay acceptance is becoming the norm. It would no longer fly for people to throw in the F slur at your basketball anime. Yuri on Ice was not the first attempt to capitalize on these changing viewpoints in modern anime, and it's debatably not the most revolutionary for its time. As I said before, as problematic as it is, the BL genre has basically instituted the mainstay of gay representation in anime for a while now. And on a more neutral note, there have been instances of positive gay representation devoid of, sexualization and such. And Yuri on Ice doesn't even say the word gay in it, and it had to censor its only kiss between the male protagonists. However, to say that, at least in the West, it had a big effect on the anime landscape and finding out what is or is not profitable, and how it showed changing opinions about LGBTQ+ people in general through its popularity and through the studio's willingness to take a risk with it. One could argue that Yuri on Ice in this way is being progressive for once in a whole line of the anime that we've discussed so far not being very willing to rock the boat. To say that at the level at which queer people were accepted in media at the time, and the skyrocketing popularity of anime in the West, and following it yaoi and fujoshi culture in the West and in Japan, business decision based, it brings into question whether or not this was so much of a risk at all, or just a sound business decision. Now that gay representation is becoming more normalized, we can start talking about what is or is not considered good representation. And I think that in the next episode, we'll have a great time discussing that with a personal favorite of mine, Stars Align. See you next time.